listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is May 9th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, you're about to travel down to a big WoW event in Boston, and so we're recording a bit early this week.
Yes, good morning. It's a very early time for us to be recording, and it's a weird day. But yeah, I think it's the last stop on the Warcraft 30th event tour is this coming weekend. It's tomorrow as we record this. So I am traveling to the event, and so yeah, that's going to make trying to do our normal Sunday midday slot very challenging this week. So yeah, we're getting the recording in a bit early. And I'm looking forward to the event, hoping to see some old friends there. I know a bunch of people that I've known for years and years and who I don't get to see anywhere near enough will be in attendance. So that'll be really fun. And they sent an email around with like kind of the itinerary for the event, and I found out that they booked the almighty Power Glove, who's an awesome band that does like speed metal covers of video game songs.
Nice.
Who I've loved and followed for years and years, and they're like local to Boston, so they will be doing a quick set at the event, which is going to be really fun because I love Power Glove, and I haven't seen a Power Glove set in probably like, I don't know, 15 years or something. So yeah, it's going to be a good time, but that's why the recording is a little bit, sometimes we get that late breaking Friday PM news about hot fixes and stuff, and it's not going to make the show this week, but that's why.
Yeah, so there'll be some things. Obviously, we had a jam-packed episode. It was like almost 2 hours and 30 minutes earlier this week on that went live on Monday, and then we're now having this episode recording on Friday, which has some things that didn't make it into that show, as well as some other new announcements that have recently happened that we're going to be covering. And then obviously next week will be not an episode until towards the end of the week, and then that'll be the one that covers PAX news. I know that Kyvax is going to be doing a 1 hour speech at PAX, and there's going to be obviously some other stuff that probably comes out or is announced over the next week, so that'll all fall into the show that we do a week from a few days from now. So it'll be like 8 or 9 days before your next episode, so just be aware of that. I'm just making sure that's clear for folks so we can be sure everyone's getting what they need to do as far as their scheduling goes in for when TSC's going live. All right. So let's kick it off, obviously, with where we left off, I guess, last week. Children's Week was just about to run out, and I had said that I wanted to do some Children's Week stuff before it did, and I did. I managed to, within the hours that I had, squeeze in 2 Children's Week runs. So the first one, I sort of paid a lot more attention to, quest text and what sort of RP was happening with the kids and seeing their different spaces, and I definitely enjoyed a lot of those storylines and enjoyed a lot of. I want a follow up quest with them in like 5 or 6 years from now. I want to know what's going on when they're like hitting their teenage years or their later teenage years, and whether they're becoming someone who's a light bringer, or becoming someone who's an inventor, or becoming someone who's like whatever that is, right? I want follow-ups. I think it's really neat that they hook you with those in a big way. And then of course I got to choose 2 different pets because I did it on 2 different characters. So I'm not fully caught up because there was some transmog options there too. So next year, obviously, if I do it on more characters, I'll be able to get the rest of the rewards that were there. But I am glad I took the time to do it because it only take about 20 minutes per. If you weren't reading stuff, it took like 15-20 minutes, but if you were reading stuff, it was for sure about 20 minutes to do that. So that was neat to see and neat to do, so I was glad I got in on that. Since that record, we have done another night of Mugsy Prog, so we got some sub 20% wipes, so we're getting closer on Mugsy, which is good. So Mugsy hopefully is this week. Knock that out, work on Galley, we're thinking we might be able to do Galley in 1 week, if not a week and a half, depending on what happens. Like obviously Tuesday that's coming up is our Turbo Boost week. So there'll be a lot of people, essentially free farming Gilded Crests and upgrading all of their gear by, those 6 item levels that we're going to be able to do. And essentially just that'll put our power through the roof. So I'm hoping that that means that if we get Muggsy this week and we get that extra item levels, it'll make our prog on Galley really simple for what we're trying to accomplish. So that is hopeful. That's where my mind's at. But we had some good polls, and I was pretty happy with prog overall on that fight. I wouldn't say that there. I think the main thing that we're struggling with on that fight is probably people not watching their feet and not being able to tell there's a mine happening. And what I'll emphasize in their own defense is there's a lot of visual effects that overlap mines that make it so it's hard to see the light brown circle that is where the mine is going to appear, including the big fire circles that are dropped. Obviously, you can bait the mines, and so we have everyone stacked near the boss and bait the mines near the boss. But when you blow up a mine, fragments on Mythic, fragments go everywhere, and people just stand in the fragments. And if you don't stand in the fragments, you take a lot of damage. And if 2 fragments are missed, then you basically it's 100% a wipe on that pole, because it's just so much damage goes out that you're going to lose somebody. And those fragments that sort of ricochet and bounce off in different directions can bounce off into those large fire circles. And then you cannot see the circle that is the fragment inside of the large fire circle. We literally had to go back and review VODs to see what wiped us on some pulls, because we're like, we know we missed a fragment, but where was it? And you had to like frame by frame watch as the piece fell out of the sky, and you're like, oh, it's somewhere in here. And then you look at the fire circle really closely, and there's like this very faint kind of outline of where a circle was that someone could have stayed. I'm like, dude, how do these things not have giant Sargeras spikes that are like 8 yards tall that stand out, that make sure you can see where one of these things is at any time? So yeah, it's there's just some awkwardness like that with the fight that's been getting us, I think, most of the time. Outside of that, there hasn't been too many large errors that have been going on. There was some stuff with ice lances, but it's been pretty smooth. So I'm looking forward to knocking out Muggsy this week. Mythic Plus wise, I have already done 7 keystones this week, and so those were initially going to be attempts at 14s to try and get Resilient 14, but we've sort of had a bit of an off week with our group, with people not being around or having work stuff come up and whatnot. So we've just sort of jammed out some keys, and it's been really fun. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about a particular Moonkin build for folks to sort of have some fun with. There's a build that myself and one of our other druids sort of were jamming about one night after raid, thinking like, man, you know what? Styx is really fun. I really wish there was some sort of build we could put together for Mythic Plus that was like the build that we use for Styx, because you just have this like miracle moments of being able to cast like 7 or 8 Starfalls in a row with like just constant spenders, because you're just generating so much AP that you can just do constant spenders, and it's really neat and kind of fun. And I'll preface this by saying this is not a build you use for 12s and above. 12s and above, there is a breakpoint where like it is just better to use a loon build that, you know, has Starfire and has the generator. It just does so much damage. Starfire as a generator just does so much damage that you want to use that build for 12s and above for sure. It's going to be better for you overall in damage. But if you're doing like 10s and below, or like 11s sometimes and below, this is like the most fun druid build that you've probably experienced in a long time. And so I really wanted to share it. So I'm going to throw it inside the show notes and make sure it's out there. And if you ping me in Discord, I can link it in there too for folks to have access to it. But it is what we refer to as the machine gun druid build. And we say that because every time you hit Incarnation, this is a trees build, by the way. Like this is not a loon build. It's a trees build. Every time you hit trees and Incarn, you basically can have an entire Incarn period where you never cast a generator. You generate so much AP in that window of time that you're just casting constant Star Surges or Starfalls, and you just like the whole time. So it's really funny because I did a 13 Rookery last night in the build, because Rookery is a unique case where because the last boss has those windows of time where they're vulnerable. This build can shine a little bit inside that dungeon. So it is kind of viable for doing Rookeries, but not as viable, I still think, as the Elune build. But it's something where that looking at the breakdown for the damage for that fight versus the running the same place on Elune, like I will have 60% or 70% of my overall damage be done by Starfall, which will be like 1.4 billion damage overall for the dungeon. And then I will have 20% of it be Star Surge, and they'll have a bunch of other things, and none of them are spenders on my list of damage done for that dungeon for top damage done. And then you look at the one for Elune, and it's like Starfall followed very closely by Starfire. And you're like, okay, so that spender does do a lot of damage as far as the breakdown goes. But if you ever wanted just a really silly, fun druid build that's incredibly viable, like this will dominate. Like if you're doing like 7s and 8s, this will destroy 7s and 8s, like absolutely destroy them. Then be sure you pick this up, because it is way more fun to play than the Elune build that's out there. It's way more fun to play than your standard druid convoke kind of build, and it's something that I think all boomkins should take advantage of while it's in the I mean, it's not in the meta, but like while you can play it inside these lower keys, these 10s and below kind of area. So enjoy that. I'm gonna throw it in the show notes for you to grab, and just have some silly fun where you basically just trees and then hit your Incarn, and then just start going wild with Starfalls on AoE packs or Star Surges on bosses. And if you're ever running low on AP during that, just cast one spender, and by the time you've cast one spender, you'll be full on AP again, and you just keep rolling, and it's a lot of fun. So always pair those things. Always pair trees and Incarn, though. Just always, anytime that, because it's a 1 minute cooldown on trees, and obviously in this case you're running the double Incarn build, so just always pair those and have a good time with this build. Jason,
nice.
What did you get up to with keys? How was your keys?
Well, so we're sort of like in opposite ends of the schedule here, because I have, like, you have stuff coming up this week. I had to get everything done before today. Right?
Fair enough.
So
fair enough.
Yeah, like I'm pretty much done. If I don't get anything else done in the game this week, I have no regrets.
All right.
Raid was full clear Tuesday. The schedule is weird this week. Mother's Day is Sunday, right? Yep. And I'm traveling Sunday. I didn't want to commit to running the raid, and I didn't want to make people show up Mother's Day. Even though we raid like in the evening, most people I think don't have Mother's Day stuff happening like after dinner. But still, if people are running around or traveling or whatever, I just didn't want to put any pressure on the group. So it actually kind of worked out well. We ran through heroic. We had a couple galley wipes, which was annoying, and then we had a couple Vexy wipes, and that was annoying. So that's where we called it off on Tuesday, which was, it was not ideal. I was hoping to get through Cauldron, but it just didn't work out. Tuesday, we re-cleared Cauldron in maybe 1 or 2 pulls. That fight is starting to feel a lot better. You can still have some really bad luck with it, but it's starting to die pretty fast, so that's good. We spent most of the night re-wiping on Rick, which was annoying, but Rick has a lot of random elements, and we just could not seem to get the amplifiers to go where we wanted them to go onto the range stack. And I don't know if it's because we didn't have an even split, like we had more melee than range, or maybe it was picking melee healers as range targets for that. So eventually, like, we had a good pull lineup, and we killed it decently faster than the first kill, so that was good. We had a little bit of time to look at sticks, like maybe a half hour, and we were very underprepared. So we'll see if we get that going next week, maybe. We're done with raid for the week, so obviously no more of that. I don't know. Sticks is going to be interesting because it's like a weak aura fight, and so we have to decide, like, can we, and we have people who rotate through the group. Like, I don't have a set roster of 20. I have probably about 25 or maybe a few more people in orbit that will come to Mythic Kills and Mythic Prog. So, managing everybody's add-on suites and weak aura suites and making sure that everybody's using the same stuff and knows what to do and all that, that's going to be a big part of learning this fight. And so, I don't know. We'll try it and we'll see what the appetite is like. I don't love approaching fights this way. It's one of my big frustrations overall with like Mythic raiding, and why I have never even wanted to push beyond like what was kind of very accessible or would kind of fall over.
Sure.
We'll see.
Yeah, let me talk for a second about sticks, because this is one of those fights where the reason why it's a weak aura fight, for people who are like, well, why is sticks a weak aura fight? Because there are certain time pressures involved when you're on one of the rolling piles of garbage that mean that you need to be really efficient with the time that you have while you're on that rolling pile of garbage. That is the problem that made it a weak aura fight. If they'd been more lenient with that time, this would not be an issue at all. So when you get up on that rolling ball of garbage, first of all, you always start rolling forward, which means you need some way of alerting yourself, hey, you're going to be picked next. So yes, weak auras will tell you, hey, you're going to get picked next. You might want to turn around and not face the boss so that you're not rolling directly into the boss and just wasting your pile of garbage that you have. So that's part of it. Once you're up on your rolling ball of trash, obviously you're inside a large round room. And inside this large round room, there's a whole bunch of piles of trash that are both small, medium, and large in size. And bombs will appear, and those bombs require a large pile of trash to roll into the bomb to blow it up so that it doesn't actually explode on the raid and just wipe the raid. You also have these guys with rocket launchers that are targeting individual players, and if they finish their cast, they will one-shot those players, which means that the only what you have to do to them to stop them from doing that is roll over them with a large ball of trash. So the moment the people get chosen, I think it's 4 people get chosen at a time to be on rolling on balls of trash, they need to turn around, pick up 3 of the small piles of trash to become a medium ball, and then pick up 2 of the mediums to become a large, or roll over a group of hyenas, which is just like the best way to make your ball big ever, because you just not only collect up the hyenas, but you also get your ball larger much faster, and roll around, first and foremost, targeting down, getting the rocket launcher guys as fast as possible so that they don't get their shot off. And second, then identifying where the bombs are so that people who can roll into the bombs are rolling into them. On top of that, there are fake bombs. There are like crabs with bombs on their back that walk around. And they appear and you break them out of like bonds that hold them, and then they walk around. If you roll into one of those, you also wipe the raid. So you have to also be really careful. And these things will obviously be tanked by the tank, which means they naturally move towards the boss. So if you're trying to actually roll your ball of trash into the boss, which does 2% of his health and damage, which is actually a lot of damage, if you hit him from behind with it, it means that you have to dodge all of these crabs that are walking near the boss that you don't want to roll over in order to get into the back of the boss and do it. And on top of that, you want to pick up as much trash as possible, because you don't want an arena full of trash, because all of the trash is very flammable. And when the trash catches fire, the fumes that come off it do damage to everyone in the arena. So you don't want a lot of flaming trash either. So like the whole fight is just really, there's a lot of critically important things that have to happen in I think it's 25-second window of time that you have while you're rolling around on the ball of trash. And so if you aren't taking care of the rocket launcher guy and getting large enough really fast enough and picking up ads and rolling, and people are taking out the bombs and people are just picking up general trash and people are rolling around to the back of the boss and all of that happening inside of 25 seconds, then you are not able to defeat the fight. You're going to fail at the fight. So it's just one of those time pressures that weak auras are basically like, okay, this is what the weak aura does. It tells people which section of the circular room is going to be their section of the room that they cover. And so their primary responsibility is to get the bomb and the rocket launcher guy that are inside their section of the room. If you don't have one in your section of the room, it's your responsibility to clean up the trash in your section and then look to someone else's section for where you can help and then roll into the boss. And so it's one of those fights where, you might be like, hey, I did this on LFR or on normal, and even on heroic, it's not really that bad. We just sort of figure it out and we can get our way through it. On Mythic, they just added this extra level of time pressure for the rocket launcher stuff and the mines, the bombs and the fake bombs. They sort of added some things that just made it a lot more critical that you use your time really well. And there's a real problem with when you put that kind of time pressure on players, because they just start making bad decisions more often, I find, where players will get on their ball of trash and not be able to become a large ball of trash in time for anything to happen for them. Like they're like, I can't find trash. Someone stole all my trash. Like that just starts happening. And you're like, okay, like everyone needs to like chill out and pay attention to what's happening and see everything from a broad view. And it's hard to do that when there's this like ticking clock of I need to get all this stuff done and we're killing a mythic boss. And the entire time I'm on a trash ball, I'm not doing damage to the boss, is the mentality that all the DPS have, right? You get up on this trash ball and you're pacified. You can't attack or cast spells or anything like that while you're on it, which means that you're essentially like I want to get on the trash ball, do what I need to do and get off it so I can go back to pressing my DPS buttons because that's what feels good. So you also have people who do that. They'll get on a trash ball, they'll take out the guy in their area and just roll into the closest bomb, and that might have taken them 9 seconds to do, and be back on DPS in the boss. And you're like, you had 15 more seconds, you could have picked up trash and had less trash in the room. We're now wiping because there's just too much AoE damage from fire. So it's one of those fights where, yes, it became a weak fight very quickly because it just needed organization / time pressure to get solved for players.
Yeah, I mean, last week, we talked about the video interview with Ian, and he was talking about sort of the future of add-ons and how, they want to dovetail that with the future of encounter design and then restrict what add-ons have access to in real-time combat. And, this fight's a perfect example. He talked about the concept of affordance and all that.
Yep.
The mechanics with the trash ball are too important for the amount of time they give you, and too many people get assigned them at once to coordinate. You can't YOLO it because there isn't enough time to cover the entire room because they know that you will use add-ons, right? And it's a vicious cycle, and it results in fight design that I just don't like. I don't want to raid lead weak aura fights. I just don't. I don't think it's fun.
It would be a dramatically easier fight. I'm just saying, it'd be a dramatically easier fight if there was half as many of everything. If half as many people went on trash balls, there was half as many bombs that were present. There were half as many people with rocket launchers. So you could just have 2 people. You're just trying to coordinate 2 people, and go, okay, whoever gets it, you basically have the raid leader see the 2 names pop up and you go so-and-so left, so-and-so right. And then those people just take off in those directions and just do what they need to do. That'd be so much easier to coordinate than being like, we're going to make it 4 people. Okay, well, how do you divide up 4 people quickly inside this window if you can't?
Right, yeah. It just adds these layers upon layers. And yeah, I think you can see the knobs that could be turned to make this a fight that you could coordinate in voice and solve the puzzle together. And to me, that's what is fun about raiding. And I mean, geez, listen to our discussion from last week about Ian's interview. Go watch Ian's interview, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. So that was raid. This week coming up, I think we're gonna go. We're in good position to have a 3 night week, and then the week after that we have Memorial Day weekend coming up. So that's gonna be another 2 night week. So I think next week we're gonna do heroic skip, get as much mythic as we can in on Tuesday, Wednesday mythic all night, clean up Sunday. So we'll see. But yeah, we might be done with Prague. We might get sticks. It really depends on the team's appetite and how much everybody's willing to buy in on what we got to do to kill this boss. So we'll see. As far as keystones go, I've already done more keys this week than I thought I was going to. I figured I'd do exactly 8 and just dip so that I could do the rest of the stuff I needed to do. But we kind of got on a roll last night. I think I ended up doing 10 or 11 for the week so far. Started knocking 13s down, got workshop done on Wednesday, I want to say. And then last night, we had a group that was just stacked and looking to, get keys done. It was me and my healer buddy, who is mostly playing Disc Priest now. And then we had our ringer balance druid, just the guy who is maybe the best player I've ever played with. We got him in the group on his balance druid. We had our very high rated Rhett Pally in there, and my Frost DK buddy that I always run with. So the AoE was just off the charts. We were just deleting trash packs. Ended up getting Theater, Meadery, and Motherload done on 13. So that put me just barely above 3K, 3001. So I'm done with Keystone Legend, and I have thank you, and I have no further goals for Mythic Plus. I thought I would get I thought it would take a little bit longer to get 3K done because a lot of the higher keys really depend on your tank's ability to push pace and pull big, and I'm playing a class that isn't super conducive to that, and I'm not good at the kind of pacing that you really need to get into those higher keys. I'm old and I'm of moderate skill, so it just is what it is. I figured, okay, I'm going to get 6 more item levels across the board. I get some optimizations. I get this trinket that I want from Chips, and then we'll get corruption. And by August, I'll certainly have this done, no problem. But so now it's done. I don't care about Resilient 13. I don't care. I'm not going to push title. So there's no rating is pointless to me at this point. So just trying to fill vaults to help people out with getting resilience done, because now resilience is going to be a big deal starting next week.
Yeah.
And you know, help people out with getting ports or whatever. Like I can all I need is my 8 10s or above done for the week, so I get my nice vault and I'm happy. So it feels really nice to have that done, and and I had a great time doing it. I mean, we had a super fun group this week, so that was awesome. And also, like, I've totally done delves for the week. I did so many delves Tuesday. I think yesterday I must have done like 10 or 12 delves just to get like the alt done. And it, you know, it's delves week, so I did 5 delves on the main earlier in the week to get the weekly done. I'm trying to get those alts all heroic geared out. They're close, but every tune is like 4 to 5 pieces off having all of the track that I want them on. So we still got some work to do, but got them all done. And yeah, down to the wire. Like, was it Sunday night? I don't even remember when I did it, but I ended up doing Children's Week 4 more times. So yeah. I got all the pets, and I got the 2 new Mog sets which are like kids like toy weapons. Basically, they're like little. They look like they're wooden, basically. So there's like an Alliance and a Horde version. Yeah. So I got those done, which was cool. Glad I got all those. And then after it ended, you get letters from the orphans, like thanking you for spending time with them, and they send you a little gift in the mail. And I was just like, oh man, that's so nice. Like, really, really nice way to put a bow on the whole thing. And I mean, from what I was saying last week, you know, like, this is the kind of stuff that makes the world of the game feel alive, and it makes you feel like what you're doing is like actually heroic, like you're making the world a better place. Like, I love when they can include those moments in the game. And yeah, getting the mailbox full of letters from the orphans was really cute. So it was just great all the way around. I loved the event, and people have an association with Children's Week that it's like this awful, terrible experience that's so sloggy and horrid because you have to go into battlegrounds and keep the orphan alive. And it's like, that is a part of a meta achievement that they took out. Even I don't even think that's in there anymore. So it's like, if you want to do that achievement, fine. But like, all Children's Week really is like story questing that you can only do that week, and that is a real change of pace, like slice of lifestyle questing inside WoW, which we don't always get a lot of. So if you missed it this week, this past week, and you haven't really done it before, just keep an eye out for, you know, next spring. Like, I highly recommend the stuff. I always mention the BFA one too. I thought the quests ahead of BFA were great. So, you know, keep it in mind. It's like, really, it's not some big grindy thing. It's, you know, it's some dialogue and stuff, and just really, really well done. I think it's some of my favorite story questing in the game, really.
Wow. Well, yeah, certainly a raving review on that one. So be sure you're checking that out. Okay. Let's see. Anything else top of show that we want to cover? Otherwise, let's just hop into what's going on this week. All right, this week is the Classic Time Walking Week, where Classic reputation gains from combat and quests are increased by 50%, and characters 10 and above can access Time Walking versions of Deadmines, Zul'Farrak, Dire Maul, East, Dire Maul West, Stratholme Living, and Stratholme Undead. And these, of course, are dropping 606 eye level gear. And there's a vendor selling 593s, and you can get a cache of normal Liberation of Undermined gear. That's something you're looking to do. Man, yeah, this is the Classic Time Walking Week is a weird one, because it's like taking your modern high pixelated graphic characters and then dropping them back into the old school days and running your way through stuff. So definitely check this out if you get a chance to do some Classic Time Walking this week. It's a great way to level up characters. You will not have the buff from Darkmoon Faire, but you will still have some of the other buff stuff going on with the turbo event. So be sure you're taking advantage of that while you can with Time Walking.
Yeah, and this is the last week for Winds of Mysterious Fortune. So, you know, it's nice that it goes out with a Time Walking week, and especially a pre 11.1.7 Time Walking week. So yeah, you know, good way to get to bang some levels out quickly. Most of these dungeons are pretty quick runs. I ended up not really doing a ton of this when it was out during the anniversary event. I don't know. We're pretty late in the season now for this stuff to feel great, and for champ gear, it's okay. I think it's really best for leveling while we still have it this way. So consider that. I mean, if you're trying to gear up, like, you might just be better off with Bountiful Delves and
The new
the
Nightfall event.
It's way more flexible, and you're not at the mercy of matchmaking queues and other stuff like that. So I don't know, time walking it's okay this week, but that's what I would maybe look at using it for, is getting some levels while we got all these buffs rolling, and these should be quick and simple runs.
Yeah, definitely take advantage where you can. There's a few characters that I'm like 5 levels away on that I've just sort of been like, I'll get to that when I get to that. This might be a really easy way to do it, because these are the thing to remember about time walking classic dungeons. They're very simple mechanically, which means people just like destroy them typically inside the random groups you're queuing into. So I enjoy this week because it's very mindless leveling for what I'm trying to do. I don't need to think too hard to go into dead mines and defeat dead mine bosses. They're not super complicated as far as what we're doing. It's just about, do you have the attention check from your team? Because really, it's like if people are super tuned out, they're they're going to stand in stuff they shouldn't, and they're going to pull more mobs than they should, and you're going to have wipes. But generally speaking, you should just trash these, and that's a great thing about leveling in this. Okay, outside of that, you got your Undermine weeklies that you might want to be kicking off and finishing up as far as your Urge to Surge, many jobs, handle it, and reduce, reuse, resell. You also have the Titan Disc Fragments quest that's kicking off. So if you're someone who's listening to this before reset, there's a chance I might have this out like on Saturday or something. We'll see what my schedule looks like for getting edits and everything done on it. So, I mean, finish your current Titan Disc Fragments, because there's more coming if that's something you're wanting to do. And you'll be able to get the next round of quest for that as far as what you're trying to accomplish. It should be very easy to do. If you're doing delves this week, you're probably already done it, because if you did 5 delves, you've gotten enough Titan Disc Fragments to finish this. So if you haven't done 5 delves yet, maybe do 5 delves and you'll finish it and get the one for next week. So definitely be picking that up. Okay. PvP Brawl is Shadowpan Showdown, where you are essentially heading into the Tiger's Peak arena, and you control the sort of like point at the center, and it activates a boss, and these 2 bosses then fight each other in this PvE-VP kind of situation, where 2 giant robots fight each other while you try and defeat the other team's giant robot, and they try and defeat yours, and you try and defeat them, and it goes back and forth, and it's crazy and fun, and it's very like something that reminds me of the Heroes of the Storm kind of stuff that they had going on, where you were pushing bosses back and forth and fighting each other. And I don't know, I like it. I think it's a fun brawl. It's really unique and certainly worth checking out at least once if you haven't yet. Get yourself some Marks of Honor, Conquest and Honor if you win one. So I'd say, do one showdown if you haven't done a showdown yet.
Yeah, pretty cool mode. Like, I always mention it every time it comes around, but I'm surprised they haven't expanded on it more, or like added another one to the rotation, like a different arena, different kind of boss or whatever. I think you could have maybe a couple in the rotation during this brawl week, maybe, but then again, maybe that's a lot of work for something that's not a big part of the game. But it is a cool idea, and we've seen kind of PvPvE sort of dedicated modes pop up in other games over the years. So I don't think WoW really has space for that, but maybe some more variety here with arenas and bosses would be cool. But yeah, it's neat. It's a cool idea. It's definitely it's definitely a bit of a different flavor than like, here's a familiar battleground with like one wacky thing. It's really a different mode.
I'd like to see them lean in to the silliness of this and have like a giant Hogger robot against a giant Jaraxxus robot, or a giant, just lean into old bosses. Have Ragnaros appear out of the ground against, Kel'Thuzad on the other side, like whatever one it is, like just have 2 silliness of up against each other, the robots or bosses or whatever they choose to do them as, would just have a basic attack where they just basically attack each other. They don't need to have, maybe they have like a similar AoE where people have to dodge circles on the ground or something like that, but nothing super complicated, right? Just have giant silly things appear, have Nomi appear on one side, and then have them fight each other, and these giant kind of like, make it silly, lean into it. I think that would be fun if they're going to be doing that with these brawls. I think the original version's neat, but I'm with you of Like if you can just use those models of those characters and essentially give them like a basic attack kit, that's great. I think that's all that's really needed, and people would have a lot of fun being like, dude, there's this giant, version of this boss that we used to fight ages ago that ends up on your team or against you, and you could get to fight it. I think that would be a fun thing to do for brawls. Okay, because they're supposed to be silly. The weekly world boss obviously is Godfather. Be sure you're knocking out Godfather this week so that you can get your 642 eye level Warbound piece of loot. That is a great way to gear up your alts once they hit max level, or if you're someone who is still working on gearing your main, it's a great way to get a 642 piece that could end up being something you catalyze, so just keep that in mind. Mythic Plus affixes for the week. We are looking at a Voidbound week, which means Void emissaries spawn while players are in combat, and basically you have to DPS down through the shield of this emissary, otherwise it will buff everything around it and make it take reduced damage. So you want to kill this thing because it gives you versatility and cooldown reduction, which is the best of the bonuses that you can receive for doing this, but it's also the one mob where if you don't actually defeat it, you get zero benefit. You don't get a benefit per 25% health you've knocked off it or something like that. You only get a benefit if you kill this mob when it spawns. So be sure you are turning and DPSing this mob down. Touch of Death should just be on reserve for this, because Touch of Death is a 1 minute cooldown and these things spawn every minute. So if you are a monk, you should just, like, it is your only mission during Voidbound week is to hold your Touch of Death for every time a Voidbound ad spawns and just throw it at the Voidbound ad, because it spawns with 1% hit points and a huge shield. So be sure you're paying attention to that. If you are someone playing an Evoker, there is a particular talent in your default Evoker tree that lets you just smack a thing with a shield for like 1,000,000 damage baseline. So just take that talent this week. It's a really easy talent to take. So just grab that one talent, and every time this thing spawns, just smack it, because it'll just help, and it's more damage for you, and it's pad. So why not, right? Might as well increase your DPS meters, because that's fun. So Voidbound week in general is a really fun week to do keys on. If you're going to be dealing with an affix, it's a great affix as long as you are consistently killing the Voidbound emissary. If you're not, then it makes it a slog, because everything takes reduced damage, and it feels like you've wasted damage by putting it into this ad that didn't die. So be sure you're killing the ad, that's for sure. And otherwise, this is power up week, which means everyone's running keys. This is going to be a heavy duty people farming Gilded Crest kind of situation, and it's a tyrannical week at 7 where you start getting your Gilded Crest. So people are going to be dealing with tyrannical bosses, which means trash will fall over easy, but you do need to pay attention to boss mechanics a little bit more than you might normally. So be sure you're paying attention to that. If you're running 10s, obviously you're already dealing with fortified tyrannical anyways, so you might know what that feels like, but those 7s, 8s, and 9s, you'll have tyrannicals, so just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, they changed up Voidbound a little bit, luckily, because remember in Season 1, like, it would immediately start channeling, like, a damage absorb shield on everything you were in combat with that would just keep stacking up, and that really stunk. So luckily it doesn't do that anymore, but it's still mega priority that you have to kill it, and then you will get your buff. So just make sure you do that. It should be pretty manageable at this point in the season if you're still working your way up through the system. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a decent week overall. Voidbound is one of the, I think it's one of the easier ones to deal with, simply because you have one plate that spawns into the field and it spawns near the tank. And then the tank can just aggro it into the cleave box of whatever you're already fighting. So that's okay. It's not as disruptive as something else might be, like Ascendant, where the orbs maybe spawn in a weird place and then they spawn in 3 different waves and you have to use weird abilities to break them. Like, you just want to kill the ads. So should be a good week overall. And yeah, I agree with you. I predict it's going to be a heavy week for key traffic, because even people who were pretty close to being done with the system as it is today now suddenly need all manner of new crests. So, yep. Yeah, I would imagine those queues will be full. I mean, you can get crests from lower level keys too. So if that's all you're in it for, then that might be a time saver if you're just trying to power up your upgrade tracks and everything.
Yeah, it will certainly be a good week for powering up your character in general, But I'm curious. I haven't actually looked at what the delve cap is now on Gilded Crest, but that might be another way that folks are just spending their time is farming Gilded Crest through delves. So keep that in mind as well. The micro holiday for this week, it's going to be live until May 13th, is the Spring Balloon Festival. For those of us who remember back in Legion when this first came out, you could essentially go to an area and queue up to hop on a balloon and take a nice tour of all the spaces, which I was super excited for when it first came out, until I realized you need 3 people to be there standing, waiting in queue to get on these things. And I think since they've shifted it so you can actually get on it faster, so that's great. But yes, if you go back to Legion, they're in Azuna, High Mountain, Suramar, Uldum, Valley of the Four Winds, Crystal Song Forest, and Nagrand in Draenor, there are balloon sort of sky tours that you can hop on and float around. So be sure you're taking advantage of going back. And I love the High Mountain one. It's really nice. So I always enjoy going back and hopping on the balloon in High Mountain and enjoying seeing the sights. So be sure you take advantage of Balloon Festival if you can. And just kind of a neat thing that they threw in there. So glad people have that.
Yeah, this is up now, I think, or it starts. It'll have started by the time you hear this on pod. I missed getting it into last week's notes so that you could prepare for it. Yeah, it's like I really like what they did with it from the storytelling perspective, but the fact that you can't just talk to an NPC and take the ride makes it pretty rough. Like you can't, there's no matchmaking. Like you said, like there literally needs to be 3 people standing around the NPC for you to get put into a balloon. So I don't know. I mean, at this point, this has been in for so long. It came out, 2017? And it's not like they've added anything to it, and there's no permanent benefit that you walk away from doing this. So I don't know. Can you even fill these balloons? Have they changed it maybe? So now you can just have one person go or something. If they haven't, maybe they should. Because that was even back in 2017. That was my frustration, was like, I wanted to check them out, but there was nobody around. So I guess I'll wait for another 10 minutes. Well, I guess I'm going to go do something else instead now. It's strange. Like we have other ways of triggering these things or filling groups out in the game. So I don't, I think it makes this holiday just difficult to participate in.
Yeah. If it still requires 3 people, there's a big problem. I thought they did something like 3 years ago or something like that to try and make it better for people, but I'm not sure. So I might check it out just to see what they do with it. If it still requires 3 people to show up and physically be there, that's a problem. I think it would make more sense if they set it up so that one left every X period of time. That X period of time could be every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes. And you basically show up and get in queue. And if you happen to get in queue when there's space and it's within that time frame, then you go. And otherwise you don't. And so the longest anyone's waiting is 15 minutes. I think that would be pretty neat to see and be a better system. So, well, anyways, I have no idea, but it's in the game. It's still live. It happens every year, and they should support it because that's the situation. All right. Hot fixes for the week. They did a lot of fixes with Cooldown Manager. So folks having abilities either not show up or show up wrong on the Cooldown Manager. So those all sort of got handled and fixed in there. They also had an issue with Havoc Demon Hunters where Fire Inside was being prevented from dynamically updating the damage bonus granted by Immolation Aura based on your current amount of mastery that you had. So basically, like activating a trinket, that increases mastery. It was something was happening there. So that got fixed for Havoc. So hopefully Havoc is enjoying that more. They also fixed an issue where Mass Eruption would not benefit from the other damage increases that you have for Augmentation Evokers. And same thing with Mass Eruption and Bombardments could not trigger from eruptions. So there was like weird broken stuff with Augmentation. So they were fixing that as well. I don't know if anyone went back to try Augmentation last week. Probably some people did based off the buffs that came in, but I certainly did not. So it is what it is. When it comes to Monk, the Zen Flight no longer restricts casting. That's an interesting one. So if you're doing your little Zen Flight, you can actually still cast while you're doing it, which is actually kind of cool. So there's a neat little hotfix for folks who are monks. And they also fixed an issue that caused Unity Within to not automatically to not automatically if no enemy targets are present when the channel ends for Windwalker monks. I assume not end automatically is what that was supposed to be. They just left
something is missing
they
from
just
that
left a
hotfix note.
word,
So
man. They just left a word out. I think it's not end automatically if no end. If no
yeah,
targets are
at
present.
least one word is missing from the hotfix note. So if you are a monk and you are using Unity Within and it's not doing something automatically, then there you go.
Yeah.
Let us know, and then we can get it into the notes for posterity, I guess. But yeah, I saw that last night and I was like, well, I don't know what it's supposed to be doing or not, so this is what it says. But there was some problem with Unity Within that is apparently no longer a problem.
Yeah. They fixed an issue that caused physical damage modifiers to reduce the healing magical damage transfers from Ancient Teachings as well. So that's another one. And then outside of that, Raid, of course, this is how the world works. We defeated One Arm Bandit, and so then they nerfed One Arm Bandit, because that's just how my raiding time has always worked. So Styx Bug Junker, first and foremost, health reduced by 5% on Mythic, and the Scrap Masters, which are the guys with the rocket launchers, their health was also reduced by 10%, which isn't a really big deal. The Scrap Masters' biggest problem is they fire rockets. Once you've rolled over them with a trash ball, you've destroyed the rocket launcher. So at that point, they are just ads that are kind of in the middle of the room that you're AoEing and cleaving down as you're sort of doing your thing. So that it's a nice change. The 5% health is really big for a lot of teams. But the 10% health on Scrap Masters is nice. It's just not massive. Sprocket, Monger, Lock and Stock, the polarized Catastro Blast damage has also been reduced by 60%. That should be a pretty good change for teams. Clearly, we're seeing teams struggle with that particular mechanic. So reducing it by 60% should just help in general. But then we get into the real target of their nerfs this week, which, like I said, was One Arm Bandit. The real assistant health has been reduced by 10%. That's all of those assistants that spawn in have had their health reduced by 10%, which is massive. The reward for coin and bomb health bonus has been reduced by 25% on all difficulties. The real assistant one is all difficulties as well. The scattered payout damage has been reduced by 10% on all difficulties. Traveling Flames damage reduced by 19% on Mythic difficulty and 7% on Heroic. So the Traveling Flames is someone gets a debuff, they walk out of the group, they get dispelled. It then creates this like 7 or 8, I guess it's 8 sort of fires that sort of radiate out from their position, and you have to dodge them. And they radiate out from their position, then they travel back to the position where they started. And so you have to dodge them twice, unless you've just positioned yourself well and don't have to move for some other mechanic that's happening. And typically, if you got hit by them, it was almost a one-shot. So 19% on Mythic will mean that this is a very survivable mechanic comparatively to where it was before, so that's pretty big. Crushed, which is getting rolled over by a coin when people are rolling coins, its damage reduced by 47% on Mythic difficulty and 20% on Heroic, which means people will now live through being rolled over by a coin. Because I could, in bear form, barely live through being rolled over by a coin. So now I could 100% inside Boomkin form live through being rolled over by a coin as long as I'm above half health. So that is a massive change for folks. And clearly that was something else people were seeing was a problem. Mugsy, they fixed it.
I just want to chime in here and say, man, like Heroic One Arm Bandit has been nerfed into oblivion at this point. Like, this is not the first time they've nerfed it, and like I'm not sure that it even needed these. But I mean, granted, I'm on a team that flies through Heroic Proc and then just kind of runs out of gas for Mythic. We're in a weird dead zone with that, so I understand it. Like, my results are somewhat atypical. Like we're a very high-end Heroic team. But like, geez, the fight wasn't really that bad. And then they just have nerfed the health on everything so many times, which is fine. This is not me complaining. I'm just surprised that they nerfed it this hard. I will say, like, having the pay lines go all the way across the screen, that was also a huge nerf to this fight ultimately, because you can get the buff so much more consistently because you can actually see where it's coming from any angle. And so like that buff is significant. And so being able to get that more frequently also just makes it that much easier to do. I mean, this is obviously a farm boss for me, just trying to fish for trinkets and weapons and stuff. But so I'm not sad that they've nerfed it. So I'm just surprised because they haven't touched too many other bosses in Heroic very much, but this one has gotten nerfed a lot.
Yeah, I am also surprised that they've nerfed one arm as much as they have, but it is a very chaotic fight. So I kind of expect towards the end of it here we'd see that. It's just weird that at the same time as our characters are getting so much more powerful, they're also nerfing a fight this dramatically. All right, Muggsy. They fixed an issue where placing Hot Mess on the stairs of the encounter would cause it to sometimes not reach the arena floor. So here's the thing, right? We're currently working on Muggsy, so I know exactly what this is. The entrance stairs, when you first come into the room that go down, is an area where you do typically, as in most strategies, drop one of these hot messes, which is the big puddle of fire. And I don't know specifically if they're fixing one thing or another thing. One thing they could be fixing is when you drop a hot mess there, it just vanishes entirely and is not present. Another thing they could be fixing is what we've experienced a lot, which is when you drop a hot mess there, it is like above your character's head because it drops on the stairs, and so your Z-axis is just weird. And so what you want to use these for is when you get ice lances, you get a debuff that makes the whole floor really slippery and hard for you to get your traction. And so if you are standing in fire or you step in fire when you've got the ice lances, logically, it clears that debuff from you and you can run normally for line of sighting the ice lances the way you're supposed to. So what we had to do is go to the stairs and then wait till the ice lances spawn and then jump. And if everyone jumped, you'd jump and your head would hit the fire and it would clear the debuff on your feet, and then you could run around to where you need to go. So I'm assuming that's what they fixed, and it's actually going to place on the floor properly now. But it could have been one of the two things. So I'm assuming they fixed the thing that caused us having to jump, which I just thought was hilarious. So yes, I'm glad that they've resolved that one with Muggsy. All right, Dark Flame Cleft. They fixed an issue where old Waxbeard can unexpectedly reset during the encounter, which is terrible. And we've definitely had that happen. So I'm very glad that got fixed because that was terrible. And then as far as items go, for those folks who got themselves the Reins of Anurelos back in Dragonflight, this is the flaming bird that you could get off of Farak. And when you mount it on this bird, you're supposed to get, if you're a druid, you get the Feather of the Blazing Somnowl, which is the druid form. And there's apparently also a pet you're supposed to get. I didn't get one of these. I'm still farming for one. So I assume that people are telling the truth when they say there's also a pet you're supposed to get. But these items were not being rewarded. Like, people weren't getting them when they were mounting up on this mount at all. And they weren't getting them in their mail or anything else. And so a little while back, people started complaining about this. And apparently some people started receiving them like in their mail. But the hotfix that's gone live is basically now at this point, when you mount on the mount, if you don't have the bonus items, they should just go directly in your inventory. So each time like you do it, it's the items are checked to make sure that you've had this properly learned on your character. So they changed some coding with the mount to guarantee that people will actually have this this bonus on their character, get these items on their character if they in fact have the Reins of Anurelos. So keep that in mind as well for those who are like, man, got this ages ago, never got the rewards. What's going on? It should be fixed. You should be good now.
We dug up, we were just looking at it before we went on the air, a Reddit comment from somebody talking about this who said, yeah, I got the mount in content and I never got the bonus items until now. So maybe there's a waiting list.
Yeah.
So this might be a really long standing bug. I don't know. This is an old boss, right? This boss came out in like November 23. So, yeah, that's been a while. If it's been misbehaving this whole time, that's pretty weird. If it's relatively recent, then it should be more consistent at this point.
Yeah. We don't tend to talk about PvP hotfixes too much, and we don't tend to talk about the ones about specific classes, but there is one I do want to talk about, which is user interface and accessibility area of their hotfix notes. They mentioned that players in random battleground matches can no longer see the names of opposing opponents until the match begins. So apparently the developer note on this is that they've reinforced the measures taken to prevent players from obtaining information about their potential PvP opponents in advance of a battleground. This is applicable to all rated battlegrounds, unrated battlegrounds, rated brawls, and unrated brawls. So folks are no longer able to sort of like either use add-ons or look up the people on the opposing team before they actually are facing them, because you can't see their names anymore. So they've tightened something up there in the UI, so just keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah, I assume people were using this to like Q snipe or something, or like load up pre-mades in some kind of toxic way, like they were using information they weren't supposed to have to, influence the outcome of matches. That's I don't know the specifics, but it seems likely that that's why they would do this, or like make, they also put out, there was a blue post, so I didn't include it, a little disclaimer about like using unauthorized third-party tools could result in account actions and all that. So like that leads me to believe that people were doing something they shouldn't have been doing to collect and use this information. So, they're trying to tamp it down a bit. Yeah,
I like seeing things like this, because I don't think that's information you should have before a match starts. I just don't. It's not needed. It doesn't. It only gives people who use the tools like that a massive advantage. So just I don't get it. Anyways, okay. We are now chatting about the Turbo Boost event that is kicking off on May 13th. So they put out a full list of what items are purchasable from the puzzling cartel chips. So here we go. Here's what's coming. So you're going to get obviously the new weekly quests. The first time you actually get this quest, you're going to get yourself right off the bat a puzzling cartel chip, 3 puzzling cartel chips, which you can spend to buy an item. The items on the list include trinkets and weapons from the raid, and include the Mythic Plus trinkets, period. Just trinkets. So if you are someone who is going into the puzzling cartel chip week on the 13th and you're wondering what to buy, most likely, obviously, places like Raidbots will have a system where you can essentially open up the vendor and do like a, what should I buy off of it kind of Droptimizer roll, if that's something you really want to search for. But I can highlight right off the bat that like Best in Slots is probably a weapon that the majority of casters and two-handed weapon wielders who can wield a mace are going to want to use, period. So like that's most likely going to be a lot of people's first purchase if you don't have one yet. The other options, obviously, are Jaster's Diamond, which is the ring off of Gallywix, which if you're someone who has not defeated, obviously, Gallywix on Mythic, you won't be able to buy on Mythic, but you would be able to get a heroic version if you haven't gotten one yet. For a lot of healers, Eye of Kazan comes in as a strong trinket for healers, although keep in mind, Eye of Kazan is kind of a weird trap, because it doesn't reach its full potential until 6 minutes, and majority of content that is not Mythic content does not reach 6 minutes. Which means you just don't really get a huge advantage out of it, with the exception of like some Mythic Plus dungeons and things like that. So just keep that in mind about Eye of Kazan when it comes to that. House of Cards is like one of the top things for the majority of players. A lot of people want a House of Cards. That is one of the trinkets from the raid that is certainly up there. A Mr. Pick-Me-Up. If you are a healer and you do not have a Mr. Pick-Me-Up, you are missing out in a huge way. That is off Sprocket Monger. It is a really good healing trinket. Be sure you are checking that out as well. It's super important. I wouldn't say Reverb Radio falls on this list. It's very easy to acquire. A lot of people have it already, and it's just a big haste trinket. And there are not a ton of classes that will not, with the 6 item level bump, be getting close to their haste cap, where they just don't want more haste. And so just a trinket that gives you more haste is just not giving you very much when it comes to the bonuses comparatively to something like a House of Cards. Or a Mugsy's Mug Jug, which is the other thing that people are looking for, which is a lot of crit. So a big crit trinket is certainly something else that's going to be on that list for a lot of folks as well. Then there's a cloak. There's a rare cloak that's out there that some people will be searching for, but in general, that's the raid stuff that sort of pings for me as an important thing from raid. When it comes to Mythic Plus dungeons, obviously, if you're somebody who doesn't have your Priory trinket yet, that's going to be a sought-after one that a lot of people are going to be looking for. The improvised Sephorium Pacemaker from Floodgate, that's another one that I think a lot of tanks will be looking for in particular, because it's super useful for that. The candle that recently, the carved Blazicon wax that recently got buffed, it's another one that I think some people might be looking for. The Soul Lighting Ruby is here, and I'm curious as to what it's going to sort of roll out like. I never actually did a roll on it on Mythic difficulty to see what it would sort of roll out like for some folks, but if you've completed all your 12s in time, you can buy Mythic versions of these trinkets, and I feel like Soul Lighting Ruby might sort of pop up for some people in that, so keep that in mind as well. And yeah, outside of that, I mean, I'm curious what some of these are going to roll like when people start doing them, but I haven't actually done a Droptimizer on all of the Mythic Plus dungeon trinkets on Mythic high roll to see what they all would turn out like, because it's just typically so hard to get them. So now it's more accessible, so I'll have to do one of those rolls as well. But that's my opinion on what's coming off the vendors for what you're going to be doing. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, when it comes to this week, with that first token coming out, there's going to be a lot of people getting that key piece of gear that they've been missing out on, and getting that upgrade rolling for them. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, we've beat this topic to death, I feel like, and I don't want to get too down that road about it. I guess we're not getting any other changes. They've changed it to where it's at least a bit better, but it still does feel bad. I do feel like requiring plus 12 resilience to get the mythic trinkets from Mythic Plus is too high a bar. 12s are going to be considerably harder for most people than 10s, and they give the same loot, right? They give the same end of run loot, they give the same vault loot. So why isn't it just 10s? Why isn't it, Keystone Hero or something as the requirement to buy these? But maybe they'll change it. I mean, there could still be time to change it, but I mean, for me, I'm definitely going straight for the Tome of Light's Devotion, which is a really nice tank trinket from Priory. I have the Pacemaker Myth Track, which I got really lucky on early this season from Vault, and I've never seen a tome. I've never seen it drop. I've never seen it in Vault, and I've sort of avoided doing Priory of late since we knew this was coming, because I'm like, I don't even want to see it. I don't want to see it drop. I'm just going to buy it. Like, let something else drop, right? Like, I don't even want this. So, I'll probably pop in LFR or something at reset and go knock out 4 bosses, get my quest done, and go get that. So that'll be nice. And yeah, the raid loot, if I can mitigate my bad feelings about this whole system a bit, like the lack of being able to get myth track stuff is essentially, it doesn't matter because we're getting the extra 2 tracks on the upgrade, right? And so it actually comes out to the same difference it would have been before. It's just your overall top end potential power is lower than it could be, but still like way higher than what bosses drop. So like it's still upgrades. It just feels bad to not be able to get it to the end of the road, and I think it's even in just all of the stuff I had to say about the system initially, it's a feels bad thing more than it is anything about itemization or character power. But that said, I'm really looking forward to Turbo Boost starting up, man. I've been playing so much Season 2, and I'm probably going to continue to. And so, I'm hard capping on every flavor of crest every week and buying them all up and, at reset and then capping them all out again. So, obviously there will be no more caps, but my crests are going to become so much more flexible. And then it's going to be a nice optimization and power boost for my main right away. And then that will also probably get me above that 675 threshold, which then trickles down to my alts. So now I can grab my gildeds on the alts that I've been collecting and not spending because I'm waiting for that achievement to get the discount. So like it's going to be a pretty significant like account-wide power upgrade for me. So that's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to that. And it's going to make it's just anything that you're working on, it's going to make so much smoother. 6 item levels doesn't sound like a lot, but you consider, it's roughly about 1% power. So if you get everything upgraded, those extra 2 slots, like that's a 6% overall buff against everything that you're doing. Like that is not insignificant. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll feel really nice to, I'm going to do 8 keys next week. I'm going to do a bunch of bosses that drop gildeds, and I can just actually collect all the gildeds from it and use them all. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, so there's something else I want to chat about. There's 2 actual things on this topic I want to chat about. But one is I feel like this entire exercise or experience has really pointed out to me that there needs to be a way to upgrade a heroic piece of loot to a mythic track piece of loot. There needs to be a way in the game to do that. Whether that is like spending the entire, like spending 60 gilded crests or 90 gilded crests or something on some sort of token or item that lets you shift a heroic track piece to a mythic track piece or something like that. I feel like there needs to be something there that will allow players to do it. And it might be something that comes out late season. It might be something like this where it's, hey, we're waiting for a Turbo Boost event to kick off, whatever it is. But I feel like there's a lot of players out there who would have that sought after. Maybe they have a heroic house of cards, right? That sought after trinket, and want to move it to the mythic track. I feel like there should be a way to do that doesn't involve refarming the boss to be able to get it, or waiting until the Donar system comes in after you've killed the boss and then buying it. So I feel like I don't know, it's just presented to me as an issue of like, we have the catalyst that lets us convert gear into being tier gear. I feel like we need some sort of system in the game that lets us convert normal gear to hero track gear to mythic track gear, etc. And whether there's an unlock for that system, like you have to have done 12s in time, or you have to have done like whatever those sort of like barriers they want to put in are in place. Maybe it is you have to have defeated the boss once on that difficulty, whatever it is. I feel like it would make sense for them to have a machine in the game that let you, or a mechanism in the game that let you actually convert an item from a lower track to a higher track in some way, and sort of reduce that farm time and / luck involved in that happening. I also feel like it would help with players who are like, look, I can't take off my hero track ring because it's just better than any of the mythic track ones that I've been getting, right? Like, it's great. Just turn that ring that's better than the other ones you've been getting into a myth track one. Like, that just is a better solution. So I'd like to see something like
I would
that.
say, to piggyback off of that, I would gladly spend like a week's worth of cap, crests under the cap, to buy an item that lets me do such a thing, even if I couldn't upgrade it that week. Like, it'd be great. Yeah.
Yep. Or vault tokens or something, right? Like, let me spend 6 tokens, right. So 2 weeks worth of tokens.
Right. Yeah. Like 2 weeks, something like that. Yeah. Like 2-3 weeks worth, where it's like, okay, I really want this. That I would love if they did something like that, although I feel like they don't, because they know that then everybody would just be saving stuff all the time and nobody would ever be taking stuff, and they want you to take stuff, but WoW players are so optimization brained that it would be better to have no power for the next 2 weeks and then get the thing I really want the third week. But that's a whole other story. I think it'd be cool to have some kind of mechanism. I would love it. I would totally take advantage of it.
Yeah. The other thing I want to mention, because this came up because we were talking about trinkets and we were talking about Mythic Plus, and my brain kind of went there because last night I was thinking on this. The vote that they held recently ended when it came to which dungeons are going to be available, and they'd mentioned like the top 4 would be part of season 3, right? So you're like, oh, okay, well, the top 4 of these are going to be part of season 3. We'll get into that obviously when we get closer to season 3 and what that's going to look like and what those dungeons are and what's happening with them. I will say both Priory and Dawnbreaker are part of that pool, but it is interesting to me because for everyone who's like, hey, I think we're only going to have 3 seasons this go around, it would mean that we'd never had a season of Mythic Plus where all of the current dungeons are Mythic Plus dungeons. And there are things in place where you need them to be for you to be able to complete things, like the quest from Stone Vault that you get for getting specific trinkets for Mythic Plus dungeons. You can only do that when it's a relevant dungeon, because you can't do the mythic mode of that dungeon unless it's part of the current dungeon pool. So I feel like we're going to see a season 4. I'm just saying, I think it's weird that we would not have a season of the expansion where all of the actual current dungeons are part of the pool, and where things like that are able to be accomplished and people are able to actually get all the portals that they want from the current expansion in one season. I'm putting that out there. That would be a weird thing that would be new if they did that. So just, if you're not thinking whether or not there's going to be a season 4, whether or not there's going to be one, that would be a unique thing that we miss by not having one. So I'm just, it came to mind and I thought I'd share on the show. And this way it's out there on May 9th in case like 4 weeks from now, Wowhead or someone is like, hey, I caught on to this thing. And I'm like, yeah, I caught on to that months ago. So just, that's the thing I want to mention.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is weird. It will be weird if we never have a season where all of the dungeons are in the pool, right? All the War Within dungeons are in one pool, even if it's a 9 dungeon pool, whatever. We've had 10 dungeon pools before, or I think we have 12 dungeon pools once upon a time.
We had the Tazavesh thing in there at one point, and that was a huge season. Yeah.
None of that would be totally unprecedented. 9 dungeons is not some ridiculous dungeon pool. So And I think when they did that in Dragonflight, we were kind of like, I don't know if I want all these dungeons in the pool together, but it turned out okay. I mean, there were obviously ones that you kind of gravitated more towards than others, and there certainly would be for this. I think the nice thing about it is, like, if you have all your ports and stuff, you don't have any specific like time limited stuff that you're caring about necessarily, at least on that level. But if you missed any, then you have a chance to go back and get them before they go away.
Right?
Like, that's kind of cool. So I don't know. Well, we'll see. It would be interesting. It seems like season 2 might be a little bit shorter than traditional, and so maybe then season 3 is also a little bit shorter, and then we have a really truncated and super accelerated season 4 leading into Midnight. Like,
I don't know.
I know
thought
people
it was
hated
weird.
season 4. Like, people hated season 4 in Dragonflight, and they disliked it in Shadowlands. I don't think it's that bad. Like, I didn't hate it, but like, I need room to breathe with WoW sometimes. I don't always want to be rolling into the next big high stakes thing, and I have this big checklist of stuff that I'm desperate to get done in season. Like, I'm okay to have, okay, this is more of a chill season. I'm just gonna do this stuff. We're gonna wait and let the next big release bake a little bit. Like, I'm fine with that, but I understand that people don't like doing the same content over and over again.
Sure.
I think if they could cut that like 4-month season down a little bit more at the end, then that might help, and they could spice it up a little bit more with like an even quicker power ramp. And just, I think the game has been really fun, so that helps. Like, the dungeon pool is pretty well designed, so I think it could be okay for me. It would be really interesting if they could shave 4 to 6 weeks off of some of this stuff leading up to the end of the expansion.
Yeah, I just feel like if we're at a point now where if you aren't currently playing if you weren't playing the game last season, you cannot get a Stone Vault portal. That is weird, right? If you think about it for an experience, like, sorry, you weren't playing season 1 and got to 10s and got your portal for Stone Vault, then you just don't get one this expansion. That seems really weird. So like, there kind of has to be a season 4. Like, I don't know. I'm just putting it out there of like people who are questioning whether we're really weird,
one,
right?
Like your only chance to ever get a port to Stone Vault was, it ended in February, and like, that's it. Sorry. Like, that would be, it'd be kind of weird, and it would be kind of unprecedented, right? Like, because even in Shadowlands, that was like the first time they did the rotation. So like, we had season 2 and season 3. Portals came in season 2 for timing. Was it plus 20s at the time, or I don't remember the numbers. Doesn't matter. But teleports first came in season 2, and then the entire Shadowlands dungeon pool was in seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Well, I guess Tazavesh wasn't in season 2, but it was in season 3.
Yeah.
And then season 4 was the mega dungeon season. So Tazavesh was in seasons 3 and 4, and then the other mega dungeons were in that season.
Yeah.
So like, you knew it was coming. You had already had a lot of time in season 2, and then we had a heads up in season 3 that like, okay, this is kind of last call on these 4 now. Obviously, a bunch of them have come back, and then you had the season 4 rotation. We had no such heads up for season 1, so like, if those dungeons never come back, that would be weird and a little unprecedented. And I think some players would certainly feel bad about that. So something to consider for sure.
You also wouldn't get a City of Threads. I'm just saying, it's another one that wouldn't necessarily come back up again. So yeah, it's weird to feel like there would just be parts of this dungeon pool that were only seen in season 1 that you don't see later. So I am now in the mindset of there will be a season 4, and that will be all of the current dungeon track. And I think that's a fairly likely thing to happen based off of this revelation that I've had when it came to how the content has laid itself out so far for this expansion. Okay, The War Within. Get a look at the Legacy of Erethdor. This is a post that we put off last week that we just did not have time to cover within the show, and so we have some time this week to go over this. And yeah, basically there's the new Arathi Highlands campaign that's going to be coming out. So we'll be heading up to Arathi Highlands. There'll be a Stormguard tabard, a Maghar tabard, and a shoulder transmog inspired by Farron's own pauldrons. So if you're someone who is a fan of Farron, you can get yourself a set of shoulders. I did notice that on the store right now, there's a Medivh set of shoulders and cloak that are and hood that are out there, which are kind of neat as well. So some of those iconic looks and appearances are finding their way back into the game. So this is another one of those things. So definitely check out the new Arathi campaign when it kicks off. I haven't looked at too much of what's going on, but there is a 5-part novella that sort of leads up to this, which is the Heartlands 5-part audio novella, as you head into the Arathi Highlands. So you can listen to that. There's going to be a link to that, obviously, in this post. So keep that in mind. The Lorewalker Cho is going to be taking people on some tours. You basically go and meet with Lorewalker Cho and Stormwind, Orgrimmar, or Dornogal. I feel like this is kind of based off of him telling stories at the anniversary event. And you will head out to 3 repeatable quest chains where you meet the Ethereals by traveling to Netherstorm. You will be experiencing Xal'atath's storyline, learning about the Blade and the Black Empire and the Legion. And the fate, you're going to face the past with Arthas, where you return to Stratholme in a condensed version of the Culling of Stratholme. So this I'm super excited about. These are major story points, and it's something they can add to if they want to with Lorewalker Cho. And so I'm down for doing more of this. They had something similar to this inside of Mists of Pandaria, where he let you sort of re-experience some of the earlier Pandaren stuff that had happened and sort of told those stories. But to sort of like have him now telling more of the greater World of Azeroth stories, I am up for this and catching people up on this lore if they want to, experiencing these things and seeing what they're doing with them. So that's really cool. Did you want to weigh in on this one, Jason?
Yeah, this was actually on the roadmap, right? We were going, what is lore walking? What does that mean? I think this is a great feature, maybe really overdue, because, you know, there are a lot of story quests in World of Warcraft. That's pretty obvious, right? And some of them matter a lot more than others, you know, and there's some characters and some storyline threads that should be highlighted in a more obvious way to players, you know. If you never played some of this stuff before, I mean, geez, I don't even really remember the Xal'atath questing that was in the game before, you know. I didn't really play a priest in Legion, and I think having an easily accessible way to play through that questing and see what's like important about the story is great, and yeah, probably long overdue. I haven't done it. I won't play this on PTR. Like, I will wait for it to be on live, but I like the idea of it, and I think it's a great kind of jumping on point for new players or lapsed players or whatever. It's just a way to establish the baseline. Like, okay, this is who this character is. This is what happened. This is what they did. This is how it affected other characters. This is why your character cares about it or should care about it or whatever. Like, I think that's great. I think the game needs that, and I would love to see this just become sort of a thing that gets expanded on, you know, as new main storylines emerge and as characters return from various exiles that we've seen them be in, or even the realms of death or whatever. Like, you know, you always have those character returns in a game like WoW, and you know, Warcraft has so many characters in it. You know, like Illidan's coming back someday. You know, Sire Denathrius and the Dreadlords are going to come back someday, and you know, all that stuff would be great things to have lore walking quests set up for, to just introduce it to players and, you know, set the sort of baseline and set the stakes so that players know what they're getting into. I think it sounds really cool. So I'm glad they're finally doing it. Should be a good entry point for people who are like, well, I jumped on in Dragonflight because I thought it was cool, but like, I don't know what this stuff, like, I don't know who Arthas is. Why do I care about this? Right? Like, well, there you go. You could do this, and you can actually experience it yourself inside the game. You're not reading like a web page or something, you know. It's or you're not like, okay, you have to go to this expansion and start this quest line, okay, and once you finish that, it unlocks this quest line. Then go do this up to this point, and then you can get over here and do the part that you want to see. Like, just, you know, this is just directing you straight to the big meaty parts of the story.
Yeah, which I think is going to be really valuable to a lot of players, and it's going to be fun to revisit for people who want the nostalgia of it. Overcharged delves are going to be taking place. These are going to be delves with affixes attached to them, so they're throwing that in there. You're going to earn some even fancier loot potentially out of that, and some feats of heroism is the way they put it. So I'm wondering if there's going to be like feats of strength for doing certain things with these affixes. Keep in mind, we're going to be doing Horrific Visions before all this happens, because obviously Horrific Visions kick off next week, and so you'll already have kind of like a solo content experience thing with different affixes you can apply with the masks and adding up all the different masks. And I feel like they're essentially doing something similar with delves, and that's what we're going to see with delves, where they're going, hey, here's your delve. Would you like to apply these additional challenges to try and get better rewards? And you can add all those things on if you're looking to do it. The additional new rewards they list here are the Titan Disc Belt, where you unlock the Titan Disc Belt at the start of the event and upgrade it weekly through a quest. The new mount, the Overcharged Mech Suit, is going to be available. There's going to be new gear available as well, and more Delve currency that you're going to be able to have. And whether that's new currencies or just in general, you get more currency to try and finish up buying all the transmogs and stuff you might not have yet, and maybe have access to this content on your alts a bit easier by spending that currency on them is entirely a possibility. All right, new UI options with the combat assist and single button mode. We've talked the crap out of this last week. So yes, that is going to be kicking off, obviously, with that content update as well for 11.1.7. So that'll be hitting. And then the greedy emissary is going to be returning. This is another one of those things where later in the cycle, sort of tied in with the Diablo event that we saw previously, you'll be able to encounter these deviously greedy emissaries in Stormwind, Orgrimmar, Dornogal, and Undermine for new diabolical rewards, including a mount. And you won't want to miss out on these truly iconic sort of recolors, including tier 2 armor sets for your characters. So they recolored the tier 2 armor sets, which, I mean, if you already liked the Paladin set, now you can have the Paladin Justice set in red, which is just cool. Like that, honestly, these are some of the best recolors we've seen of some of the old tier sets. The Druid one looks amazing. I never thought you'd see the big eared kind of like, you know, it's you got the large moose horns coming off of the helmet. That set looked good, but they've like scrolled runes onto it that now glow against the darker colored sort of antlers that you have. They did a similar thing with all these sets. They all became like darker, and they have reds, and you know, dark colors and red just go well together. So I think the greedy emissary thing looks really cool. I think these are going to be great sets for people to collect, and they're going to enjoy doing them. So I can definitely see people diving into this. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, tier 2, like obviously we talked about it around the anniversary event in November. I mean, it's one of the highest hit rate tiers of ever, and I think the new stuff they did for the classes that didn't exist in tier 2 all mostly came off pretty well. And these are not the Burning Crusade recolors either.
Yeah.
Right? Because Burning Crusade had like dungeon recolors of tier 2, and a bunch of that stuff has been data mined as well. We haven't seen that officially, and we don't know if that's coming or where it's coming from. But like, you know, Green Wrath, the warrior set that was like the Burning Crusade dungeon recolor, that has been like remodeled and recolored like this, but it's a new recolor that's a lot darker. It's like, it's almost like a gray. It's like it's pretty dark gray. Really looks great. So that I'm really excited to collect that. I've been wearing the new Wrath like this whole time since November. So yeah, I'm into it, and I hope they have the other recolors pop up from somewhere else. I mean, I guess this is going to be like the Diablo crossover thing, right?
Yes,
The Security Emissary.
Yep.
So
Yep.
And so I don't. Maybe that means there'll be stuff that you can unlock in Diablo 4 from as well. I don't know. We'll get more details about it when it's time. I think the mount. I don't know. It looks like there was some data mining on a recolor of the Tyrael's Charger that was the MOP pre-order thing.
Oh man!
Where you got like you got Diablo 3 for free, and then you got the Tyrael's Charger mount in MOP, and there's like I think the recolor that popped up in a data mining post this week. So maybe that's from this. I mean, this is usually a pretty simple thing, right? It's like the event starts up and like you just fight the stuff in the portal. So there's not a lot of technique here,
it's a cool recolor. People are curious. It's a cool recolor. It's not quite what I would have hoped. I was hoping they went full red, like the whole wings and tail and everything of it were just like Diablo red with this mount with like a really dark color. It's not. It's like a yellowy orange kind of color coming off that with some dark gray armor with some red highlights on it. So it's cool. It's not quite what I expected for Tyrael's Charger, but it's very cool.
It's basically a recolor to be like, hey, this is Tyrael's Charger, but it's not that one, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's not that dramatic, but yeah. They don't give like detail. They don't give details when it's going to happen, but yeah, I mean, I got all of the tier 2 remodels from the anniversary. Hopefully it will be possible and reasonable to get all of the recolors as well. Like, I'm definitely here for it. And it sounds like they don't give a lot of details, but the collector's bounty buff thing that's coming in, hunting for legacy drops, increasing drop chance. Like, I mean, we'll see what that actually means in practice, but
it might be a better chance to get those old mounts that you might not have had.
Do some mount runs. I think would be the number one thing on the table, because
maybe get your shoulders from Garrosh. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe if it's like just unique items like that, or stuff that's considered very rare or whatever. Some of the transmog stuff is a little blunted by warbands, because you could just run through and collect every appearance that's dropping, but mounts are obviously a different thing, and pets are usually like they pretty much just drop. That's not like really a thing. You'll get pets if you're trying to farm a mount, but yeah, it might be a cool. I feel like they haven't really done something that was as focused on like collectors as this seems like it's going to be. I mean, 13 Mog recolors, new mount recolors, and other probably new rewards just from that, plus a buff to collection from doing old stuff like that. It seems like there's definitely a niche for something like that.
Yeah. And then Turbulent Timeways are also kicking off, which is how people are, as I mentioned last week, getting their sort of guesses on when the actual season 3 stuff will kick off. But we have something in this post that we did not have last week, which is the Chrono Corsair Skyriding mount is highlighted in this post as one of the rewards. So if you master the Timeways, you can get that Chrono Corsair Skyriding mount, which is the essentially a Chrono Drake, which is already cool looking, and then they threw the Corsair hat on it and saddle on it. So with I imagine some jewelry as well. So it's certainly something that's worthwhile checking out and picking up and participating in to try and get. So take advantage when you can.
The Infinite Pirate Dragon is finally a reality. I mean, that meme is now like, it's already like 6 years old. It was 2019, right? Because it was mid BFA that dungeon came out, wasn't it? Or I'll say this: like, I have never really done Turbulent Timeways for kind of a variety of reasons. The first time it came around, I would have done it, but I was out of the country for 2 weeks while it was going on, so I had no way to actually get the rewards. So I was like, I'm not going to bother. And then last time I could have done it, I just really didn't care to. This time, like, if I'm assuming that the Infinite Pirate Dragon mount, which is actually, it's called the Chrono Corsair.
Yeah.
If that's the reward from doing the achievement for doing all of the Turbulent Timeways time walking, I am definitely doing that. This is the kind of reward that you dangle this, and it's like, okay, I will. This is the carrot that I need here. So yeah, absolutely, we'll be doing that. BFA time walking is like late. We were on a schedule where it was coming in like 2 expansions later, so we should have had BFA time walking like a while ago.
Let's properly announce this. There's going to be BFA time walking. It's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Let's supposed to be talking about it. Yes, the big thing with this event is that week 1 of Turbulent Timeways will be BFA time walking. We'll then do Mists of Pandaria, Burning Crusade, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, and then in week 6 it goes back to BFA time walking. So if you're someone who wants to see time walking versions of Ataldazar, Freehold, King's Rest, Shrine of the Storms, Temple of Sethralis, and Waycrest Manor, then they are coming back as time walking dungeons. If you're someone who's excited about that, that's great. I am genuinely excited about that. It is certainly something that I was not expecting to see as part of this round, because as Jason just mentioned, they're very late with the dungeons that we're seeing for time walking. I expected this years ago, and it's strange to have them only arriving now. I'll also say, interesting choices of dungeons. Just choosing to leave out, Underrot and Tol Dagor, and like there's some ones here that are kind of iconic to BFA that they chose not to put in. So that's interesting to me as well.
Oh, Temple of Sethralis is going to be so fun with the eyeball gauntlet thing. Yeah, and Shrine of the Storm is I mean, like, I love that dungeon thematically, but yeah, it was it was a little complicated, and we'll see how it feels with the time walking changes overall. I mean, Freehold and Ataldazar are kind of, they're slam dunks. Waycrest I love, although I understand the complaints about it. Even with the jank, I could never bring myself to really hate it. But Sethralus is the one where it's like, man, I really don't want to do that part, like in time walking with. I didn't want to do it when it was in content and we all knew what we were doing and we were doing it every week, right? Like I didn't like it then, and now it's like, well, every 3 months this comes around, and if you roll, I mean, imagine rolling this one instead of Freehold, and it's like, oh great, time to have fun in the in the old time walking dungeon here.
I understand why we didn't get Siege of Borealis, because it's obviously been a Mythic Plus dungeon for a bit, so like that makes sense to me. And I guess I understand to a certain degree why we didn't get Tol Dagor, because it's iconic, but it's not like, I guess, as like something like King's Rest is really iconic to that expansion. But Underrot, I feel like, could have fit in there as opposed to Temple of Thralis. I'm just putting that out there. I would have taken Underrot over Temple of Thralis, even with the struggles that were in that dungeon back in the day. I feel like it would have been more fun, and I would have enjoyed it more than Temple. So, yeah.
It also like tied really directly into the first raid of BFA.
It did. Yep.
Whereas Temple really didn't tie into anything.
And it has a mount.
Yeah, true. And also it came back as a keystone, like after, so like it's something that has some familiarity and some more history. I think that that might have been a better choice for the overall rotation. Like one thing about it is, there was a lot of memes about BFA not an Old God expansion, etc. Like when it quite obviously was an Old God expansion. Underrot is like maybe the most Old God dungeon in the pool, and it's not present for the event around kind of revisiting BFA. Like that's a little strange, but I mean, it is what it is. I think overall, like BFA had some really good dungeons, so it's cool. I wonder if this means that like the overall sort of philosophy around adding stuff to time walking has changed dramatically, because it used to be 2 expansions later time walking comes in, which would have meant that this should have been BFA time walking would have been in Dragonflight, and at that it would have been a bit earlier, probably even. This is a I think 11.1.7 is probably officially beyond the halfway point of War Within, and it's like 3 expansions down the road. So I wonder if we'll see, Shadowlands time walking, I guess, in Midnight. That'll be really weird, because the Shadowlands dungeons have never really left us with the Mythic Plus rotation, right? We're always going back to those. So, but yeah, I wonder if they're stretching that out a bit more, just putting bigger gaps between adding stuff into the rotation. The rotation is already quite long. And then in this expansion, we ended up getting Classic, right? Classic was a brand new concept. Add that to the rotation. Now we're adding BFA, even though it's late. And so now the rotation is massive, right? Like it's so far to get all the way through it. So it's not like new expansions are going to stop coming out. So what does that mean for the overall structure? But I'm happy to see a BFA finally coming in, and I will definitely be doing the whatever they call it, whatever the achievement is for mastering the time ways to get the Corsair for sure.
Yeah, it's a cool mount. It certainly fits in with a lot of the lore for BFA and a lot of the jokes that were happening during BFA that came out about with that. All right, so the Legacy of Erethdor 11.1.7 PTR notes came out, and so this is something else we can add to as well. The cooldown manager we've already talked about a bit, where they've sort of tweaked some timing on it, but they're also tweaking some abilities so that the cooldown manager and utility cooldown portions of the cooldown manager now display information for totems like Earthbind and Healing Streams. They've added more to it as far as that goes. So this is really why I wanted to mention this, is because, as I said, as long as they continue to iterate on this thing and continue to work on it on a regular basis, that's really important. So like, even with the announcement of this thing less than 2 weeks ago, we are already seeing new iterations happening on it and additions happening to it. Like it is an active thing that they are changing and adding to. So that's what we want to see with features like this that come out, where we're like, I don't feel like this is there yet. Great. They're just working on it constantly. So they're just giving us this version so that when the next patch hits, that version gets better and better and better and better. And that's all we can ask for from the devs as far as that goes, for sure. Players in random battleground matches can no longer see the names of opposing players. That's part of this same hotfix that just went live. We talked about that earlier. So that is out there and in the wilds. The overcharged delves, they did some testing available for that, as well as the belt apparently is customizable, is kind of the neat thing about it. So you can sort of like piece together the belt the way you want to, I assume, and make it look the way you want. I'm hoping you can make this thing like, you know, a wrestling belt reward, or all the way down to like something simple and classic. Like, I would love if that was the level of customization you could do, but I don't know. I'm hoping that's what you can do. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a visual thing. I guess we'll see. I mean, it's there now. So I don't know when I'll be checking it out, but and I guess the big question for me with it is like, is it going to be good outside of delve content, right?
Yeah,
is this belt like, do we just use it because it's going to go
like
pretty high item level,
right?
It looks like, right? Yeah, it's going to go well beyond the bounds of our current item level, but it looks like it doesn't really have stats on it outside of armor and primary. It does have a proc on it, which, like, if that works in all content and is usable and powerful, then you know, if it overcomes the lack of stats, then that's maybe a thing. It also has like traits on it that you unlock via playing the overcharged delves, right? And so do those traits function outside of delves, or are they delve only traits? These are things I don't know, and I am not going to be doing PTR testing. So, you know, for my own information, we'll have to wait until we get some more official word about it, or we see some more coverage of it. But it's a cool idea. I like the idea of delves are starting to get pretty stale for me. I've been doing so many of them this season, and I really like what they did. I think the tuning is great, and I think they added some cool texture to the gameplay. The rewards feel really nice, but definitely feel like with the .7, having something to mix it up a bit, maybe add an additional layer of challenge for better rewards. I think it's a good time for that. And yeah, if the Titan disc belt is, that'd be really cool if it was something that, okay, yeah, go grab this and power it up, and now go use it in keys, go use it in raid, whatever. It's just a good item everywhere. That'd be awesome. If it's just for delves, it's a little bit less cool, but it's something I would still get a lot of use out of, because I'd probably still be doing alt delve somewhere for some reason, you know, at some point. So yeah, I'm thinking it's, you know, it'll have different powers that you unlock via participating, like powering it up or whatever through completing delves. So kind of a cool item. So we'll see how we end up actually using it.
Yeah, I'm also hopeful that when they say things like customizable, it starts referring more to the actual cosmetic appearance of something, because a belt is something that always sits on top of all of your armor, right? Like, it's not like bracers, it's not like a ring necessarily. It isn't always a visual that you can see. It's something that literally, when you put on a belt on your character, it just goes in front of everything. So if you could have a customizable belt that could have coloration you want, have size or buckle sort of differences that you want, have an effect, whether it's like a different elemental effect attached to it, whatever it is, that'd be really cool. I'd be really down for that. So I think it'd be neat if they lean into some of that stuff a bit more when they're doing this kind of item, a customizable item. Okay, so time walking. This is why it's important to have PTRs. This is why it's important to put stuff out there in notes for people to find, because feedback is critical to decisions that the devs are making. So in time walking, they've now increased the enemy health in all time walking dungeons. The boss health significantly has been increased in time walking dungeons, and they've adjusted the difficulty scaling with the following changes. They've lowered geared players. Lower geared players are now slightly more damage resistant. Incoming damage should be more noticeable against geared players, and fixed an issue where the item level scaling did not account for enchants, gems, and other power sources. Okay. Time walking gear will now also drop adventurer gear up from explorer. So you're going to get 1 track upgrade. And completing a time walking dungeon now rewards 25 time warp badges up from 10, which is also good. But why these changes? Why the enemy health increase? Why the boss health increase? Why making stuff essentially more difficult? The developer notes on this says that these changes aim to make it possible to experience time walking dungeons more authentically, giving players the opportunity to use more abilities and practice their class's damage rotation, healing spells, or defensives. When players wish to use Time Walking Dungeons to level up, we want you to learn your class in realistic combat encounters, especially boss encounters. These also acknowledge the rewards players who take the time to acquire powerful gear. This also acknowledges and rewards players who take the time to acquire powerful gear, since better gear increases your damage, healing, and survivability. We will actively monitor testing and feedback and will make further adjustments as needed. If you don't like these changes, go be vocal. That is what I have to say. If this is something you think is a good change, then go be vocal. That's something that I have to say about both of these situations. This is why feedback is important. Personally, I dislike these changes. That's me. I feel like making time walking harder and take longer to get through doesn't help me play better. It just takes longer and harder to get through, which makes it more of a chore, which means I'm less likely to do it, which means maybe it stops being the way that I prefer to level, and maybe I prefer to level a different way because it's faster than time walking. And now there's just lower participation in time walking, and that's sort of the snowball effect that doing something like this has. That is my concern about this entire situation. Now, do I think it's good for a new player to come in, hop into Time Walking Dungeons, power level blast themselves to max level, and then have no idea how to play their class or how to play the game or what's going on in it? No, I don't think that's healthy for the game. But I think there's other things you can do to help players avoid that being what happens. I don't think making it so that when I want to level a new class, I have to essentially choose between going out in the world and questing or doing time walking dungeons or doing normal dungeons. And really the questing thing becomes more and more attractive to do, which, hey, FYI, I'm not learning my rotation when I'm questing. Just putting that out there. I'm not fighting anything that's going to take me long enough to learn a rotation or have any kind of inclination of what my rotation should be when I'm out there questing. And I don't think you should make questing somehow more difficult than it currently is, because I don't think that's healthy for the game. I feel like a lot of the time, and this might be something that came about from them going, hey, we're going to introduce the new systems of the one button press and the guided casting where different buttons light up, and that this is going to help players. And so we want more versions of the game for leveling experience to help players learn what buttons they're supposed to press. Man, I just want to smash Time Walking Dungeons. I just want to see that content, have a laugh, be through this stuff, like do 5 of these things in like an hour and a half and be done and not have to look back at it again. I think that's where I'm at. And so if this is turning that from an hour and a half into like a 3 or 4 hour experience, that is not going to be enjoyable for me. I'm just putting that out there. If I'm wiping in Time Walking Dungeons now because people aren't doing mechanics properly, that's not going to be fun. That's not going to be enjoyable for me. So I'm concerned when they say things like boss health has been significantly increased. Now bosses already were falling over pretty easy, so maybe significant increase isn't that bad. But if it suddenly starts feeling like I'm running, mythic zeros or mythic +3s, and when I'm doing time walking, that's not going to be an enjoyable experience for me. And it's not going to feel like the adventure gear reward is really one of those rewards. So I don't know. I'm hesitant and not super thrilled about seeing time walking getting harder.
This is bizarre too strong of a word to encapsulate my reaction to this. I don't want to experience Time Walking Dungeons authentically. I don't want it to be an opportunity for players to practice their damage rotations or healing spells. They're not like accessible enough, right? Like like we're just talking about, the time walking rotation is long. These dungeons don't exist very often, right? You have a week every 3 months or whatever it is to get in there and do them.
Yep. And when you do them, there's a chance to get that particular dungeon.
Yeah, you may never see a dungeon. You may not see a dungeon in the 5 that you're doing. Part of the problem here is that everything in WoW is based on do this week.
Yeah.
Everything is just weekly. Nothing is really in the moment. You don't care about doing a time walking dungeon. You care about doing the 5th one, right? That's a whole other problem and issue. The only reason why you would care about doing a time walking dungeon is if you were leveling a character, because you would want to get the XP from it, right? So I think this is just misguided. I don't think we need more health on time walking enemies. I think it's weird that if you're in lower gear, you take less damage. Like, what? Why do that? Why should incoming damage be more noticeable against geared players? Like, geared players should be taking less damage than lower geared players. It fixes an issue where item level scaling did not account for enchantments, gems, and other power sources sounds like a big player nerf, because it sounds like your enchantments, gems, and other power sources are going to be worse in time walking as a result of this. Time walking dungeons dropping adventurer gear is better than a dropping explorer gear, but still relatively pointless. The only thing here that's straight up good is 25 badges per dungeon from 10. That's way better. That's cool. Thank you. I don't know. I mean, I guess I guess I should test this and see how it feels, but like, in what universe do I have time to log on to PTR and sit in a time walking queue to go do time walking dungeons to test how, like, I don't have enough time in my life to do any stuff that I actively want to do. Sometimes, like, you have those weeks where it's like, man, I'm just done. And so I'm not going to be able to test and provide quality feedback on the way time walking dungeons actually feel as a result of these changes. But I don't understand what the goal is here. For years and years, time walking dungeons have been this breezy kind of thing. Hey, remember this expansion? Okay, well, you could do these dungeons this week and you get this kind of token reward. There's some cool stuff to collect. Hey, also, it's like a good way to get some XP on some characters. Go have fun. That's the way it's been, more or less, like, since it was introduced. Maybe there have been moments here, like maybe it was first introduced, they didn't quite land there, but over the years it hasn't been something that's skill testing in any way. And I don't know, like, I think it's great to have opportunities for players to develop their skills and practice and develop skill in, like, actual gameplay situations and potentially with other players. Why are we grafting that onto time walking? Time walking has meant a pretty specific thing in terms of the experience you're going to have for a long time, and they've been slowly kind of nudging that dial, trying to make them a little more, a little more challenging, require you to play them a little bit more traditionally. And now it seems like now they're really cranking the dial on this, or at least from what they say here. Again, I haven't played it, but I don't think this is a good move. I don't think this is what players want out of time walking as a system. And I mean, it's really, I don't participate in time walking very much. Maybe at the very beginning of a season when champ gear is still interesting to me. And depending on how this feels, it might mean I just barely ever do it at all. Like, if this feels bad and then we have to slog through turbulent timeways to get our infinite pirate dragon, like, that's going to be miserable. Let's just be real about it. Like, imagine queuing into, Temple of Sethralus, which is in the rotation twice, right? There's 2 BFA weeks for the event. And you just end up with people who didn't play BFA. They don't know how anything works. You're wiping in the eyeball gauntlet thing repeatedly. What is this? Is this authentic? I mean, I guess it would be an authentic first look at Temple of Sethralus. Is there anything particularly fun about that? Like, in my opinion, no. In my opinion, time walking dungeons should be a breeze, and it should just be about, oh yeah, remember this? This was a cool dungeon, or oh man, remember how much we used to hate this dungeon? Yeah. Then you blow through it in 10 minutes or whatever, and you get your stuff, and you move on to the next one or not. If you really want to reintroduce the content in a way that players are benefiting from it with current item level gear and, like, practicing their rotations and their defensives, like, make a separate mode for that. Make it some kind of time walking plus, essentially. Like, have it be a thing players can always go do, and you can make a queue for it or whatever. And if people really want to get adventurer gear and play a more authentic version of these dungeons to develop skill in a more low stakes way, do it that way. For the holiday week, man, let me just queue up and blast like we've been doing for 10 years or whatever. I mean, time walking came in 2013. I think it was second year of Pandaria. And, like I said, it hasn't always been queue up and blast, but it's like 90% of the time it's been that it's existed. It's been queue up and blast. So I sort of understand like what they want to achieve here. I just don't think time walking dungeons are the vehicle for it, right? Like
Well,
it's just not what players want out of the system, in my opinion. And just the way I experience them with other players, nobody's like, man, I wish this was harder. I wish it was more like it was when we used to do this. I wish this took longer. I wish there was more of an element of danger here. That's not a feeling I've ever had, and I've never had anybody say that to me.
I think you hit the nail on the head for me as well with your comment of, because this is such a limited time thing that we see, like you really only see these dungeons when time walking is available for that 1 week. If you happen to queue into them, making them content that players need to learn and experience as authentic content is a bad idea. Like it's just a bad idea. It should be easier than content that they have access to that's repeatable content. It should be on every level, because like it would be like saying, hey, okay, the Mythic Plus rotation for this season is going to be a different set of dungeons every week. And you're like, oh, well, wait a minute. Well, don't worry. You'll see that first rotation 3 months from now. And you're like, oh, well, so the first rotation is 8 dungeons, and you'll see those 8 dungeons for this 1 week in Mythic Plus. You can push as high as you want to push. And then next week will be a different set of 8 dungeons. And you won't see that first week that you spent all that time learning and making routes for and planning for and gearing for and everything else for 3 months. Then you'll see them again. And you're like, well, wait a minute. Like, I'm going to have completely forgotten everything. Yes, you will. You'll have forgotten everything. You'll be in a totally different place gear-wise, a totally different place potentially spec-wise. You might have changed your rotation or how your class works by the time you see these dungeons again. Why would you do that with time walking? It makes no sense to do that with time walking. So I'm with you. This content is available for a 1 week at a time. Then it rotates out. You don't see it again for months, and potentially not until another expansion launches based off of when you might be seeing this, which is a radically different change for your character. And it needs to be pushover content for that reason. So it makes no sense to do this. So that's just, I don't know. I'm pretty verbal about it. I have a pretty strong stance about it.
Yeah, it just seems like a net loss. Like, this just seems like you're making a thing that players, even if nobody really loves time walking, like, it's not odious. It's a thing, you know what you're getting into. Yeah. And you do it if you want the rewards, and you can ignore it if you don't want them, and that's fine. But another thing that I think of, like, while you were saying that, is like, one thing we talk about a lot, we were talking about it last week quite a bit, is how class design and encounter design kind of go hand in hand. You know, it's like one hand washing the other.
Yeah.
And so if you're having a more like authentic experience in dungeons that weren't designed around the class that you're currently playing, like what you're not going to get to a point where the dungeon is, it feels like a current content challenge, because it's not going to account for the tools that you have. It's going to just be weird piles of health and maybe really spiky damage for reasons that don't seem fair, right? And I think that's when you look at, like, they bring an old dungeon back, like Throne of the Tides, I thought was a really cool Mythic Plus dungeon. I love Grim Batol, what they did with that, but like those were not, they didn't, dial up the scaling knob and go, okay, done. This is a Mythic Plus now. They reconfigured those dungeons. They moved stuff around. They custom rebuilt the packs and like how you interacted with the stuff that you were fighting in it. They redid the bosses. If you're going to go in and like retool all of these dungeons to make them fun War Within content, and then do it again and make them fun Midnight content, and do it again and make them fun Last Titan content, okay, well, maybe then we're living in a different world of time walking. If you're just turning the knob into this thing must live for 2.5 minutes. I mean, I don't think that's going to be that long, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if all we're doing here is just like pumping up the damage, the health, and spiking the damage on this stuff, like, it's not going to make it more fun. It's just going to make it more frustrating. So I don't know. I guess we'll see once people really start, if we get any kind of critical mass of feedback from people playing it on PTR, how it actually feels. But this just seems like an unnecessary annoyance. Like, they built up so much goodwill with players over the last like 3 years or so, or 4 years really, since like mid Shadowlands was really where it started to turn around, when they went, oh, this really isn't working. We have to be more player friendly. And they've really been that, a lot. And now lately they're starting to cash in some of that goodwill. They're making some changes that are just like, we're going to make you feel bad, or we're going to make your experience worse because we have a goal in mind for this that doesn't align with how players have been interacting with it. And it's like, I know players don't design the game, nor should we, but why do you want to do this to Time Walking Dungeon? Like, you're telling me why, or you're telling me what you're doing or what you want to achieve, but my question is, why is this the thing that you want to do to Time Walking Dungeons as we have known them? And I'm, I bring my own biases to the table. I'm not sure there's an answer that I would go, oh, actually, that makes sense. That sounds really good. Like, time walking means a very specific thing to us after all these years, and I'm not excited at the prospect of them becoming a chore instead of just a breeze.
Yeah. It needs to remain a fun tour through old content, not a chore that you're going to be participating in. So I'm with you on that. Okay, with that, it's been quite the episode. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. We have a special shout out today to Arajian, Bradley, James, Garrett, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, and Shorel. Thank you so much for all that you give, as well as all that our patrons give for both past and present. We appreciate all of you very much, and you help keep those archives online. You help us participate in amazing events and create content. So thank you so much for all that you are supporting the show with. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons. Past and present, couldn't do it without you. We really appreciate the support. It helps keep the show going for sure. And it means a lot. So thank you all.
And if you want to support the Patreon, you can find it over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. Just log in there with your web browser and get that going. I have not moved over to, because it's going to be happening at some point for our patrons, the monthly charging system thing, as opposed to the per episodic, the way that we currently have it. That will happen at some point in the next chunk of months. Not switching over has meant that mobile devices like Apple and Google, I believe right now you can't technically become a patron through, which I felt is like a nice side consequence, because we don't want people using those things, and I'll list why, which is Apple and Google, as well as other app developers, have basically decided that if you subscribe to any Patreon through their app, they add an additional surcharge to you that they take money off of. And it's not, hey, you've subscribed to us for, $4 an episode or something, and so they're taking two of those dollars. They're going, no, if you subscribe to us for $4 an episode, you're just going to have to pay $6, and we're going to take the $2 off the top. That's dumb, and I do not agree with it. So we want people to go and use their web browser to become patrons, because it means you don't pay that surcharge. So by all means, I'm kind of okay with delaying swapping that over, because it means that if people try to become patrons through their phones, they are not being charged extra money. They have to use a browser. So use your browser, become a patron, support the show, keep the archives online, keep us going. We appreciate you. Thanks so much. If you want to leave us a review, you can head on over to your iTunes or Apple Podcasts, leave us those 5 stars. We appreciate those. Same thing with thanks. Spotify has 5 stars now too, so we appreciate those as well. And that's going to wrap up episode 683 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for the episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.social, or on X at The Starting Zone, or you can join our Discord server, like I mentioned, thestartingzone.com/discord. And if you want to get your hands on some TSD gear, you can find that at thestartingzone.dashery.com, and it's spelled the same way it sounds, DASHERY. So thestartingzone.dashery.com, where you got shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of stuff. Same stuff as we had on the previous store, just they got bought out by somebody, so now it's Dashery. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is on socials. You can find me at Twitter. It's at Shieldwald over there, or on Blue Sky. It's jlucas.bsky.social over there. And usually post stuff on, I post probably more stuff on Blue Sky than on Twitter, but I do check both sites, so come say hi wherever. And you can find video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Again, they've been quiet, man. I just haven't really been streaming. I do want to get back to the retro stream. Streaming Pokemon is really fun, so won't be doing that this weekend, though, because I will be out of town. But yeah, check out the video channels, give them a follow, and I'll pop up there from time to time.
If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Blue Sky at spencerhd.bsky.social. I'm also on X at Spencer_Downey. I'm on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD and YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.